Hello, hello. Welcome back, technologists. Welcome back to the podcast. I know I have been absent for a little bit, so I'm going to dive in and let you know what I have been up to. So, as the cooler weather has been upon us, you notice that it's getting darker, you know, lately, and it's getting darker as we're driving home. So, I just noticed that yesterday. So school is back into full swing and fall is here. My favorite time of the season is Halloween, so it is upon us because I decorate more for Halloween than I do for any other type of holiday, season, event, you name it. So, kind of a little bit of housekeeping on why I've been a little bit absent. I've had a couple of deaths when it comes to family and a very close friend of mine. So back in July, my maternal grandmother, passed away from Alzheimer's. This lady had Alzheimer's for 18 years. I'm telling you, she was a fighter till the end. So I tragically lost my grandmother and had to fly back to New York City to pay her my respects and be there in the comfort of my family. And most recently, about a few weeks ago, a very close friend of mine who I considered family tragically passed away from a pulmonary embolus, so from a PE. And I had just seen him 2 days prior, and he seemed like he was okay. I noticed a couple things, and I kind of like drilled him on it, and he said he was okay. So it was sudden, and he tragically passed away. So, been kind of dealing with some things. They usually say these things come in threes, and working in healthcare, we see a lot of death when it comes to that, unfortunately. So, that is what I've been dealing with. So, I apologize that I've been absent, but I did a podcast episode with my friend Sean Hudson, that is who tragically passed away from the PE. I will go ahead and link it into the show notes here because I do have another podcast called the Rare Mama Podcast. That is where I talk about all the special needs parenting things. If you don't know, I am a special needs parent. On top of that, because I do have a child with autism and another child that has some medical complexities. So these podcasts kind of go hand in hand, and it's one of my passions. So over there, I talk about all the not only special needs parenting, but the parenting, my journey in divorce and recovery from divorce. I talk about motherhood. I talk about fatherhood. I also talk about dating and relationships when it comes to being a single parent and getting yourself back out there, and especially being a special needs parent. So if you're interested in that, I will link it in the show notes. I did an awesome episode with Sean where we talked about fatherhood, and it was a great episode. And I re-aired that episode recently in honor of his family at their request, and just so they can remember all the good things we talked about as far as fatherhood. Also, I am teaching a live workshop as well. So on September, I think it's 25th, I'll make sure I link it in the show notes. I am going to be hosting a 60-minute live workshop where you get to come in, workshop with me. I am going to be talking about IV access and how to be confident as fuck as a CT technologist. I'm going to go into depth about all the types of IV access that we can use, what we can't use, and kind of give you a little demonstration of the different types of access that we do have that care of my rapid response team nurses were so grateful in giving me so I can teach this course. So make sure you guys sign up to that live workshop. I will be posting on my Instagram stories and reels and all the good things on my email list. So make sure you guys sign up for the live workshop so you can get on the email list and know what time I am dropping that workshop. So make sure you check that out. It's all in the show notes. So let's get into today's episode. Today's episode is going to be a good one, okay? So we are going to talk about a day in the life, CT Tech edition. So I'm going to kind of go into a little bit in the day of the life of a CT Tech when you're out on the floor, when you are out there getting yourself prepared for the day, and some things that you should be just making sure that you're on tip top so you can perform at your tip top best. Okay. Now, first thing that I like to start out with is daily prep and routines. So when I talk about that, that is QA, your quality assurance, your air cals, things to keep everything in compliance and checks, and making sure that all the tests are within normal limits and nothing is out of that standard deviation that we have to comply with in CT, per the state regulations and all that in ACR and per the physicist, right? So making sure you do those, making sure that you log all the numbers into the CT QA books. Those are very important because when like IEMA, that's through the state of Illinois, or any state regulatory, comes in, they always want to check the books to make sure that those things are tip top. Now, one thing I stress is the importance of making sure that you prep your CT room. So if you're assigned to a CT room, I know in my facility, there are 5 scanners. We have 5 scanners in the department. So depending on, what size your department is, making sure that you have everything available to you as far as sheets, syringes, contrast, oral contrast if needed, IV start kits, things to start IVs, flushes, making sure that you have tape, all the necessaries to make sure that your room is set up and making sure you're ready to go so you don't waste a lot of time, because a lot of times we have critical patients and we don't have a lot of time to get ready, right? So making sure that you stay tip top when it comes to those things. And then reviewing the schedule for the day. Now, I make it a habit to make sure that I review the schedule, even though we have a charge tech that does review everything as far as the work is concerned. But just to kind of look at everything and review the schedule, because sometimes, you're solo on a shift, right? So making sure you review the schedule for the day, the exams that are ready to come over, labs, IVs, pregnancy tests on female patients that might need oral prep from the floor, any procedures, biopsies, CT coronaries. I know we get assigned each week, it rotates with all of us techs on who does biopsies and then who does hearts. So if I am scheduled in hearts, I make sure that I have my schedule, make sure that everything is there as far as the patient's needs, labs, if allergy, prep, whatever the case is, and making sure that my room is prepped and ready to go, EKG leads, you name it, right? So prep is very important in making sure that you review the schedule, because it's important so you get ahead so you don't get behind. Now, I know sometimes we come into the department and the department is a fucking shit show, okay? Especially if it was a really rough night for the night shift. So just be mindful, night shift, they do their best, okay? Because I was a night shift tech for a very long time. So just to make sure that you guys communicate and make sure you're on the same page as what needs to come over, what is left, what is pending, if there's any special instructions, things of that sort. Now, patient interaction and care. This is one of the most important things because we have to explain a lot of different exams to patients all the time. And a lot of times patients are altered. They may speak a different language. They may be unconscious. They may be intubated. Those patients that are able to communicate, or if you're using a translator, to make sure that you properly explain in terms that the patient can understand those things that are going to happen before, during, and after the exam, and if there's any post instructions, okay? We want our patients to be comfortable to know that they are in the best care and they know what's happening during the exam, just in case they have any questions. And make sure you answer their questions. It takes a few seconds just to answer their questions. I know that our department is just a lot of hustle and bustle, it's very busy, but those few extra minutes can be very, very valuable to the patient, and it could prevent any, mishaps, right? So a lot of the times we as techs, as far as the scanning, selecting correct protocols, the importance of patient positioning. Listen, on every podcast episode, I'm always talking about centering and patient positioning. Guys, it's very important, okay? Because we want those doses to be right, and you don't want a physicist, coming after you about why your dose is so high, on this scanner or this particular attack, right? So, in paying attention to detail is very crucial when it comes to, the day in the life of a CT tech. We have to just be mindful of that because we want the most optimal exam. We want the patient to get a diagnosis, right? You don't want to produce shitty exams. I've seen that where some techs do not care, but we have to care about what we do because think of it like this. If that was your mom, that was your dad, that was your grandma, that's your daughter or your son or your husband or your partner, you want the same care that another technologist would give them, you to give to that patient. Okay. A lot of times we have to think outside the box as well, and we have to problem solve a lot. So the challenge is when difficult cases arise, whether it's trauma, whether we have equipment issues, whether we have a difficult patient, we have a combative patient, we have to know how to think outside the box and really problem solve so we can figure out how to produce the best care for the patient and how to get an optimal exam if you can. Now, when it comes to those combative patients, sometimes you can't. You just have to do the best you can. So I always tell everybody, use your best judgment. If you can't get it, you can't get it. Sometimes they can sedate them, and sometimes they can go ahead and do other measures. But I always stress to the techs that I train or that I educate, just use your best judgment, think outside the box a little bit, and it'll work wonders. Now, the last piece that I have is collaboration and teamwork. Like, we have to work closely not only with each other, but with radiologists, with nurses, with ordering providers and physicians, the trauma team. So, effective communication and teamwork really benefits those outcomes for those patients, and it improves the efficiency of our department. Now, I know we get a lot of residents that are hard asses, okay? We do. I have a few of them at my hospital, okay? And even some of those attendings, and we have nurses that really just grind our gears. But we can collaborate and really talk to them in a way to say, hey, this is for the patient's benefit. How can we execute this so that we get this exam done? It's safe. It provides the physician what they need, and it gets the care to the patient. So a lot of times communication does go a long way. Okay. It's the same way where you're communicating with your partner, you're communicating with your children. Communication goes a long way. Okay. And it's very important because it improves those outcomes to those patients. So those are some of the tips as far as the day in the life, the CT Tech edition. Okay. Now I know if most of you listening or all of you listening, you may be parents, just like myself, or you have a certain routine. Just make sure you are ready to go and do those self-care routines in the morning. I know when I get up in the morning, I have my coffee, I plan out my day because usually 9 times out of 10 I'm taking my children to school before I go to work, if I happen to work on that day, because I only work 3 days a week. So getting yourself in a habit, in a routine to make sure that you have the best day, and making sure that you prep your room, patient centering, reviewing the schedule, all those things so that you can be a successful technologist and just keep improving those skills. Okay. So I hope this episode was really, really helpful. So I will leave everything in the show notes as far as my other podcast, that interview with my friend Sean Hudson. The details to the live workshop. Don't miss out on that, guys, because it's going to be a good one. We're going to talk about all IVs and what we can and can't use for contrast media. Okay. Always, if you have any questions or if you want to come on the podcast, there is a link to a form. Fill out the form. I will get back to you. If you have any questions, please contact me via email at contact@thecteducator.com. And you can always follow on Instagram at the CT Educator. I post a lot of great stuff on there. Okay. So thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I will chat with you guys next week.